Hello and welcome to Cupcake Addiction's handbag or purse cupcake tutorial, where I'll be showing you how to make this great little Chanel handbag cupcake. I first saw this idea in the book Cupcakes, Cookies and Pie, Oh My by Richardson Tack and Alan Richardson, and I knew that I had to do a tutorial on them because they are amazing. There's quite a lot to this tutorial, so let's get started. Tools and equipment that we will be using today. I have 2 cupcakes rather than the standard one. I've got a pair of scissors. I've got a butter knife as well as a serrated edge knife, so just 2 knives there. I've got a quilting tool. If you're not familiar with what a quilting tool is, it looks like this. It's got a little wheel on the end of it, a metal wheel with tiny little teeth that rolls around. These come in most sewing kits. They're not expensive. You can find them in the sewing section of the supermarket. I've got a spoon. I've got a half portion of our modelling chocolate. Modelling chocolate recipe and tutorial is on our channel if you're looking for how to make that. I've tinted mine a lovely light pink, Chanel pink I like to call it. Now, a batch of our modelling chocolate is going to do approximately 6 of these cupcakes. So if you want to do a dozen in all this colour, you'll need a double batch of that modelling chocolate pre-prepared. I've got some of our perfectly pipeable buttercream frosting. I've got some melted white chocolate. I've got some soft eating licorice. Do make sure that it's the soft eating licorice, not the hard licorice twists. You can tell that it's soft eating when you push it with your fingers. You'll see that it pushes out of shape. I've got a few little pink cashews or little pink shiny balls that I'm going to use for the clasps. I've got 3 different circle cutters. The sizes that I'm using today, I've got the smaller is a 2 centimetre or 3/4 inch. The medium is a 3 centimetre or 1 1/4 inch, and the largest is a 5.5 centimetre or a 2 inch cookie cutter. If you don't have circle cutters at home, I suggest you get a set. They're really handy, but if you don't have them, think about the things that you do have in your kitchen that you could use. The larger one is about the circumference of a champagne flute, and the 2 smaller ones could be the insides and the outsides of different piping tips or other things that you might have around the kitchen. I've also got a couple of cocktail sticks or toothpicks, and I've got some licorice strap. So these are sold generally by the metre, and they're just a bit of black licorice sold in a firm strap. Let's get started. Firstly, we're going to take our 2 cupcakes, choose which one you think's got the better looking patty pan or cupcake case on the bottom, and unwrap the other one. I'm going to take some of that melted white chocolate. I'm just using white because it's the closest colour to the pink that I'm using on the modelling chocolate, so it blends quite well. Just dab that on top. Now you can see that my 2 cupcakes are both quite flat on top. If you do have a high dome on your cupcakes, just trim it off with that serrated edge knife so you've got 2 quite flat surfaces to stick together, and just sandwich them together. They should look something like this. Now that's going to go into the freezer for about 15 minutes, and we're going to let that white chocolate seal really set, and then we'll come back and get carving. Okay, so that one's been in the freezer for about 15 minutes. You can see that nice chocolate seal is really hard. So I'm going to take the serrated edge knife, and I'm just going to trim this cupcake into a sort of a handbag shape. So I'm going about a 1/2 inch from the edge of the cupcake, and I'm going in a downward angle all the way out to the outer edge of that bottom of that cupcake. I should say the top upside down, and then again on the other side. And I like to just take a little bit off the corners as well, just to give them that nice rounded shape. And a little off each edge. Don't want it to be too sharp. You should have something that looks like this. So now I'm going to take some of that buttercream. I'm using our perfectly pipeable buttercream frosting, but you could just use tinned frosting for this. It doesn't really matter. This is just going to act like a little bit of a crumb coat, so you're just putting a very thin layer of the frosting on and pushing it into that top cupcake. And that's just going to keep any crumbs at bay. Should be nice and easy to frost because it's been frozen. That top cupcake will be nice and firm, so your crumbs shouldn't be going too far anyway. Now you can see I've got a little bit of a gap just here, so I'm going to just spread some frosting in there as well, just to even it up. Try not to get frosting on the outside of your patty pan or your cupcake case. You really want to try and keep that nice and clean. And before we pop it back in the freezer, just scrape off any excess because you do want to retain that lovely shape of the handbag that you've just carved. Lovely. So when your cupcake looks like this, it's time to go back into the freezer for another 5 minutes just to firm up that base coat of frosting. Okay, so my cupcake's been in the freezer for about 10 minutes. It's not frozen, but it is quite firm, and that crumb coat's lovely and set. Now I've had a bit of a tidy up while that's been in the freezer. We want a nice clean work surface because it's time to roll out our licorice to make the Chanel logos. The reason I love soft eating licorice as opposed to black fondant, you can use either, but soft eating licorice rolls a little bit firmer than black fondant, but it's really readily available and you can use it in such tiny amounts. So if you just want a little bit of it to do a bit of detail work or to pop a little Chanel logo on a handbag, you can take it out of the cupboard, you can use it as much as you like and then pop a seal on it and stick it back in the cupboard. Ready for the next time. So you can see that as I'm rolling that, I'm just turning it over. That's so that I don't develop too much of a bend in it. And I want to make sure that I roll it out so that it's big enough for 2 of my medium-sized cookie cutters to sit in. So I'm happy that's a good size. Now I'm going to take the medium cookie cutter, circle cutter, and I'm just going to cut out 2 medium-sized circles. Get rid of that excess. Then we're going to take the smaller cookie cutter and right in the centre of that circle, cut out a smaller circle. So what you should have is 2 lovely black licorice O-rings. Another great thing about black licorice is it actually holds its shape a lot better than fondant would. Springs back into shape for you. I'm going to take the knife and I'm just going to cut out little areas to make that a C. So I'm cutting out just a small amount there and on a slight angle. You can see there I'm not cutting out very much at all, but as I cut it, you'll notice, cut it out on a slight angle. Those are going to be our little Chanel logo. We'll loop them through each other, ready to go onto our handbag. Now I've pre-rolled out that modelling chocolate. Great things about modelling chocolate is it doesn't need to be rolled immediately before you want to use it because it doesn't dry out like fondant does. So I've rolled out a piece. It's about 18 by 22 centimetres. The equivalent is 7 inch by 9 inch. And we're going to place that over top of the cupcake. Before I do, I'm just going to give the cupcake another coat of frosting. We've already got that lovely crumb coat on, so I'm just going to smear about another 1/2 centimetre or so of frosting over the top. That's going to give us a lovely soft and sticky surface to attach that modelling chocolate to. Once again, make sure that you just scoop around it to retain that shape of the handbag. Take a little bit of that excess off. Alright, now I do this buttercream just before I put the modelling chocolate on. Buttercream can crust and dry out very quickly, so you want to make sure that it's nice and sticky so that modelling chocolate's got something to stick to. Now I'm just going to lay this piece, it's quite a bit more than I need, but I'm just going to lay it over the top and to smooth down the top of the bag, the handbag, and the front. And I'm just going to work the edges out with my fingers. If it creases a little bit as you get towards the patty pan, that's great because it is a handbag. So you want it to look a little bit slouchy and a little bit like it's actually being used as a handbag. If it's too perfect, no one will believe that it's used. You can see there I'm just smoothing down and that's actually sticking to the buttercream. I've rolled out a piece much bigger than what I need and that's fantastic because it means that I don't come up short. I'm going to take my scissors and just snip around the main part of the excess, and that can go over for our next handbag. Now at this stage, use your fingers just to get that nice handbag shape back, smoothing down the sides. And then I'm going to pick it up and you can actually see the patty pan through the modelling chocolate a little bit there, which is fantastic. So I'm going to take the scissors, I'm just going to cut up and I'm going to cut along that patty pan. probably the fiddliest part here, getting that modelling chocolate on. But like I said, it doesn't dry out like fondant does, so you can go as slowly as you like here. Now I'm going to tuck that modelling chocolate just over the edges of the patty pan, just pushing it up. That's going to seal in that lovely top cupcake and just neaten off those bottom edges. You should have something that looks like this. Alright, it's time to pop that lovely quilting pattern on. So I'm going to take the quilting tool. Now with the quilting tool, I like to do all of the underside quilting before I pop on this top flap. So start at one corner and just indent. Alright, so I'm just finishing up my lovely quilting design. Now you should have a quilted handbag that looks something like this. This is the point where you'll choose your best side. This one's a little bit messy, so I'm going to go with that as my front side. We're going to take another piece of modelling chocolate, already rolled, and that larger cookie cutter or circle cutter, or the champagne flute if that's what you're using. Make sure you've finished all the champagne in it. Cut that circle out, and then just with my knife, I'm going to just trim the back edge off. You might want to trim this a couple of times. So I'm going to just check how that looks by placing it. Perfect. So you'll see there I've got the back edge that I've just trimmed flat, sort of level with the back of that handbag. Now I'm going to use a little bit of melted chocolate to adhere that. And I'm just going to pop a little strip of it along the top with one of those cocktail sticks. Nice and centered. There's our top flap, and just push it down around the edges. Now I want to do just another little quilt around the edges, and that's just to make it all fit in nicely. A little bit of stitching around there. All the way around. Beautiful. Now it's time for us to affix the little Chanel logos. So I've got those two C's looped through each other. I'm going to pick them up together, and I'm going to just pop a little bit of white chocolate on the back in the center of both C's, and I'm going to affix those to the front of our lovely handbag. Just hold them on for a second to make sure that they're stuck. A little bit more melted chocolate just on the edges of those C's. And as you're doing this, just shape the C's so that they are nice and even, curled across like the Chanel logo would be. We want people to think these bags are genuine, not knockoff Chanels. So the details must be correct. Now if you have gotten any little bits of white chocolate, you can see there just coming out the sides of the dark licorice, just take your spare cocktail stick and just clean up your edges before that chocolate dries too much. So we've got a nice neat finish. Alright, time for finishing touches. Firstly, we're going to pop in our little handbag strap. So I'm going to cut a section off that licorice strap with my scissors, and I'm just going to cut across about 2.5 of the little widths, I suppose, markers that are already patterned onto it. If you don't have licorice straps, you could also use Twizzlers or licorice twists. Now I'm going to turn this towards myself so that I get it dead in the center. You want to make sure it's nice and even, and you want to push that down. Make sure that you're pushing it through that modelling chocolate and into the cake below. You'll actually feel it go in. Finally, we're going to take a little bit more white chocolate and we're going to add our little tiny clasp, or our little pink balls. So just one on the front and the other one just beside it. Clean that one up a little bit. And there you have your gorgeous Chanel handbag cupcake, ready to take over to any fashionista's party, give to a friend, give as a gift. If you love our tutorials, make sure you check out our stiletto high-heeled shoe tutorial, also on our channel, and make sure you subscribe. We've got lots of great tutorials and we're always coming up with new and wonderful ideas. Thanks for watching.